everyone, welcome to another episode of Son of Elijah. My name is Mac the Lion and I'm your host for this program. We will be continuing our series on the false church, and Son of Elijah is a mandate that was given to me many years ago to address specifically the problems and the challenges we are facing in the church regarding those individuals who are not really of us, but they are with us and they are masquerading as a real thing in order to bring falsified content into the church and filthify the process, so that at the end of the day the religious spirit takes over. And at the end of the age, many people will now say, but we know you, Jesus. We worked miracles in your name. We raised the dead. We did all kinds of things, powerful stuff in your name. And Jesus will say, depart from me, for I knew you not. For I know you not. Why? Because the essence of the religious spirit is to make sure that the ones who are religious will be disowned at the end. And that is a spirit that is working hand in hand with the false church. I shared my story of how God gave me an encounter far back in Durban, South Africa, where 5 principalities were presented to me. The first one, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. And the fifth entity there was the false church. The one I believe that is the most dangerous in all the means, because he's the enemy within. He's the enemy that has found a way to worm its way into the church. And based on another encounter I had with the Lord Jesus and the Father, he showed me clearly that 20% of the church is corrupt. 20% of the church of Jesus is made up of the false church. Is corrupt, and there are deceivers on rampage. And I give example using a sample size of a man by the name of TB Joshua, who recently was exposed by a production of BBC, a documentary that covered the testimonials of a number of people, about 30 of them in total, who were his proteges, who worked with him and who came and exposed him. So he has become the poster child or the face of the false church, because he's a wizard originally and has always been. But he found a way to deceive and bring about a new brand of Christianity, a new brand of the prophetic that was filled with contamination, all in essence, all designated to bring ruination into the lives of many. He was a falsifier. He trafficked in the souls of men. And today we are going to continue on that series as we drill a bit deeper. Now I will continue to read from our main text, which is Revelation chapter 2, and I read from verse 18. And unto the angel of the church. Now this is Jesus speaking, and John the Revelator was the one capturing it. And he said, and unto the angel of the church in Thyatira write, this thing saith the Son of God, who hath his eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like fine brass. For I know thy works, and thy charity, and thy service, and thy faith, and thy patience, and thy works, and the last to be more than the first. So they were good finishers. They ran till the end of their mission. The last was always better than the first. So their decibels don't drop with time. Rather, they gain momentum and strength as they pursue the things of God. Then verse 20 said, notwithstanding I, Jesus speaking, have a few things that I'm against thee. So Jesus has a few things against this church, even though they were a very powerful church, a very relevant church, a very great church. But Jesus said, I have a few things against thee. He said, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, because you permit that woman Jezebel, thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess. Because you permit, you allow that false prophetess by the name of Jezebel, you allow her to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication and to eat things that are sacrificed unto idols. So first of all, Jesus made it very clear that she was a false prophetess. And the spirit of Jezebel is the spirit of the false church. The spirit of Jezebel, because I ran through how I'd explained in my last session how Jezebel is the daughter of a man, a king, the king of the Zidonians. And she was the first daughter of this man. The king's name was Ethbaal. He was a worshipper of Baal, and Jezebel, being his daughter, his first daughter, was raised as a priestess in the very temple and the very idolatrous extreme practices of the worshipping of Baal and all other devils and all other spirits that were being worshipped. Now Jezebel was married into the household of Ahab, who is the king of Israel at that time. And when she came in, rather than her being converted and following the Lord God Jehovah and serving God's people, on the other hand, she became a notorious witch who brought in whoredom, filth, and all kinds of destructive, extreme worshipping of strange gods and contaminated the land. So much so that when Elijah came before God, he said the whole nation is corrupt. God said 7,000 has not bowed to Baal, neither had worshipped nor kissed at his feet. And even at that number was so small compared to the millions of people that served this strange idol, this strange devil. And it was all by the doings of Jezebel. Jezebel was extremely notorious. She killed prophets. She murdered people. She took out anyone who stood in her way. She established the temple of the worshipping of strange idols and gods. She established all kinds of strange things. She set up high places and groves for people to go in and practice all kind of despicable acts, all in line with the worshipping of a strange idol. Jesus, addressing this matter, said, even though you're a great church and a powerful one, but there's a problem I have with you. You permit Jezebel. Jezebel speaking here, remember, the real Jezebel had died about 3,000 years ago. But now Jesus was talking about the spirit of Jezebel, because the spirit of Jezebel is simply someone personifying the very core and essence of the practices and the nature of that spirit that was prevalent in the days of Ahab 3,000 years ago. And now that spirit is in the church as of that time, and it's also in the church as it is today. The worshipping of strange spirits, the indulgences of strange acts. Because as we read further down, he said, you taught my people how to worship strange devils, taught them how to commit idolatry, taught them how to commit fornication and eat things that were sacrificed to idols. He said, because thou sufferest that woman, you permit her to do all these things. Now you need to understand there are three things that I mentioned here. First, she is a false prophet. Second, she is also a false teacher. And third, she caused the people to eat things that were sacrificed to idols, and most especially they committed fornication. Whoredom was a regular of her day, and that was the spirit of Jezebel. Now you need to pay very close attention. First of all, as a false prophetess, every false spirit, every false entity would always draw individuals to themselves, would always draw spirits to themselves, because self-glorification is the order of the day. Jezebel was at the center of the action. How you know false spirits and false entities is that they may once in a while mention Christ and mention his name, because all good deceivers must sprinkle in a little bit of the good stuff, so that in order for you to reel you in and be convinced that they are talking about Jesus. But the essence is that they have no relationship with him. The only thing they are interested in is glorifying themselves. That was why there was a time I was watching a television program, and this man that I mentioned, who is our example in this whole project, TB Joshua, I saw that there was a program on air, and then he was communicating with a certain fella. And as he was communicating with this fellow, he was telling him, and he called the person out, then started calling out the spirit, and now the person was acting like a demon-possessed individual. Then the person started saying, oh, we've been sent to come and stop you because you are one of the greatest men that ever risen. You've been very powerful. You're unstoppable. You are this, you are that. You're so magnificent. You've been destroying all our kingdom, destroying the kingdom of darkness, and we find you to be very dangerous, very powerful, and as a result of that, we've been looking for ways to stop you, but we've just discovered you're unstoppable. So then we still sent one of our people, one of our agents, to come and confront you, and now that we are confronting you, even though you're overpowering to us, but we still came to see how we can stop you. And the man went on and on talking about how this man was great, how he was so powerful, I was one of the greatest men that have ever been placed on the earth, how God really depends on him for him to do great wonders and being a major force, a major prophet in our times. And I said, what in the world is this? And I said to myself, do these people who are seated in this congregation listening to this drama, this show that is before us, do they know that that spirit that is speaking through that man and the prophet and the supposed prophet himself, do they know that they both work for the same boss? Because this is a setup. How dare you use devils to magnify yourself? How dare you use devils to authenticate yourself? It is not scriptural. In the days of Jesus never allowed demon spirits to authenticate him or to endorse him. Remember when the Bible spoke about how when he went to the temple, went to the holy place, and when he was ministering to people, the Bible said there were people that were demon possessed, and the very minute they saw Jesus, they started crying out, they started screaming out, you are the Son of God, you are this, have you come to judge us before our time? And Jesus will immediately hush them and shut them down and cast that spirit out, because demonic spirits are not allowed to endorse you. Now I'm watching a man who deep devils were endorsing him, speaking of his greatness, talking about all the magnificency of his power and the things he was working out and doing. And now he's now coming and say, oh, stop there. Oh, it is God that sent me to stop you and all that. And I say, oh, this is just a show. This is a setup. Can the people see clearly that this is a false power? These are devils that are at work communicating. Jesus never allowed them to speak. Someone say, but how about the story of the madman of Gadara who came out of caves, and when he saw Jesus, he started speaking, and then the demons, the legion in him started communicating. If you watch that scenario very perfectly, you would understand that it was a private moment that Jesus was journeying down to a certain place with his disciples. So only the 12 that was with him at that point in time. And then the madman of Gadara was the one who came, literally. And when he came, Jesus decided to use it as a teaching moment. And he only did that because he was in the privacy of his students, the 12 disciples, and he wanted to explain and show them. So he allowed that spirit to speak. And at the end of the day, casted that spirit out and set the man free. So that was a private moment. And Jesus never told them to communicate with anyone, because every time Jesus was in a public place, he never allowed devils to speak, not to endorse him. But this time, since it was his disciples, he wanted to use it as a teaching moment. So that's why I allowed them to speak. And at that time, he only allowed that spirit to speak just briefly, and then he sent them away into the pigs, and that was the end, and set the man free. And even when the man said, I want to be your disciple, I want to follow you, and Jesus said, no need to do that. Just go back and go and tell everyone how great God is, what the Lord has done for you. Magnifying the Godhead. Lift up the name of the Lord, because it's never about self. It's never about self. But every false prophet, false teacher would always try and magnify themselves, would always do everything they can to magnify themselves, because it's always about them. It's always about the agenda. They will always push it. And all the time I was watching all this drama, I said, this whole thing is a setup. Can't they see clearly? I'm not saying that that devils were not speaking through the man he was communicating with. I'm talking about the man the TB Joshua was communicating with. I'm not saying that was not a real demonic manifestation. What I'm saying is that devil that was speaking through that man and the spirit that was operating through that false prophet are the same. The whole thing is scheduled to create a certain level of self-glorification. And one thing you must understand about these false prophets is that at the end of the day, the end game is to bring people to them so that they can go and bring many more people, and so that their places can be full. Because at the end of the day, they are trafficking in the souls of men. They are trading and trafficking in the demise of the souls of men. Babylon has 26 assets that she traffics in. And one of these days we are going to go through them. But the 26th one, if you go through it, he said, and then she traffics in the souls of men. These false prophets are traffickers of the souls of men. They are trafficking in the demise of a generation. And now it's permeated. And these were the people who brought a certain brand of prophetic that warmed its way through this man. And this man is the poster child because he's the main person that drove it. I call them underwear gospelers. That's what they do. All they come and tell you, oh, you are wearing a certain color of underwear. And it's always something disgusting and dirty. It's always that at the end of the day. Oh, this one is a lustful person. You are a prostitute. Oh, you sell your body. Oh, you think of always masturbating. That's what it's always about, lust. And the reason is because the spirit of Jezebel is being powered by three things. Number one, the spirit of falsehood, which is the spirit of corruption, which is the spirit of witchcraft or wizardry. Number two, the spirit of whoredom, which is the spirit of immorality, fornication, delicious fornication, as the Bible enumerates it further down in chapters 17, 18, and 19, talking about the great harlot, the great whore. It's a spirit of whoredom. It's a spirit of sexual immorality. He says the kings have gone into her. Then the third thing is the spirit of trafficking, which is the spirit that traffics in the destinies and the souls of men. It's the spirit of merchandising. And that is the spirit that controls the lust of the eyes or wealth. If you look at it carefully, witchcraft is the spirit of the pride of life. Then whoredom is the spirit of seduction, which is the lust of the flesh. Then last but not the least is the merchandising spirit, which is the spirit of trafficking and selling the souls of men for money. And that's why wealth comes through those mechanisms. And these are the people who indulge in all kinds of practices on the pulpit in order for them to bring money, because it's always about money. How much do you have? It's always about bringing to them. And even though a little bit here and there, they will carry cameras and show how they've been taking care of the whole world, the fatherless, the widow, and all that. But all that is a charade. All that is a show, because they are trying to hide the real thing that is behind it, because they are wizards, because they are witches. This is the spirit of the serpent. You remember the spirit of the python that kept declaring when he sought Paul and said, Paul, these are the ones that have been, because he was trying to endorse Paul, and said, these are the ones that have been sent to help us, to show us the way of light, the way of God. These are the ones that have been sent to guide us onto the right path. And Paul had it the first day, the second day, by the third day, he said, I'm taking this rubbish anymore. And he addressed that pythonous spirit and said, come out in the name of Jesus. And the Bible says when that spirit came out, when the owners of that whole enterprise saw that their profit and for gain was gone, they rabble roused the people and channeled them against Paul and Barnabas, and they almost tried to kill them and lynch them. Why? Because they had exposed that false spirit. Now remember, these people were using that diviner, because these are diviners, they are wizards. TB Joshua was a wizard. He's a diviner. He was using strange powers and strange spirits to conjuring up all kinds of things, doing things in secret places, and then just setting up a show. And that's why they depended so much on the media and the cameras in order for them to project their falsehood and their lies, in order for them to project trickery. And at the end of the day, they were trafficking in the souls of men. At the end of the day, they were driving an agenda to destroy destinies, and that's what they were doing. It's the spirit of falsehood, the spirit of lies. It's the spirit that powers witchcraft, it's the spirit that powers whoredom, and it's the spirit that powers merchandising or trafficking in the destinies of men. And that's why they're cashing onto the destinies. And that's why, strangely enough, they always have a lot of money. These strange preachers, these strange entities, they always have a lot of resources, because they are trafficking in the souls of men. They are trafficking in whoredom. They They are trafficking in whoredom. They are manipulating the destinies of men. They are selling people short because it's all the spirit of destruction. And that is what is occurring and repeating itself in our world today. So we need to pay very close attention to this, because even Jesus made it very clear that you allowed her, that prophet, that whore, and she taught them how to fornicate, immoralize, traffic in the destinies of men. That's why the agenda is simply those three things that I mentioned, which produces corruption, seduction, and deception. Corruption is spiritual, seduction is bodily, and deception is mental, is of the mind, spirit, soul, and body. And that's why if you go to Revelation 16, you see where the city was broken up into three places after the order of the three things she was trafficking: corruption, seduction, and deception. And that's why it can simply be summarized as money, sex, and power. Power, which is the power of wizardry and witchcraft. Second, which is whoredom, which is fornication, which is sex. And third, which is simply deception, which is a functionality of trafficking in the souls of men in order for them to get the money that they need. Money, sex, power. That is the force of Jezebel. That is the entity that is thriving on the earth, and that is the manipulation that is destroying the destinies of men, and that is what is corrupting the church, seducing the church, and lastly, trafficking in the souls of men. That's why there are always stories of people that are missing, or people that died suddenly, or people that were trampled upon on the entrance of the church. It's always like that, because these are part of the souls that have been trafficked. These are part of the destinies that suddenly die in those places. Either by a building collapsing on them suddenly or something. There has to be blood sacrifice, because it is always power of witchcraft, which is blood that has to be letted out, seduction, which is sex, and whoredom, and last but not the least, which is trafficking of their souls for money. That's why they sell water, they sell oil, and all these strange things, all in a bid to consummate this destruction. So I will leave it as it is. I will leave it here on this episode today. I hope you've been able to get something from Son of Elijah. This is our program. Please do share, please do like, so that the algorithm can bump it up. Please do share it so that others can listen to it and see for themselves what is at work in our world today. My name is Mark the Lion, and I hope you enjoyed this program. I will see you in the next episode of Son of Elijah. Bye for now.